let's start things off on a friendly note before we get into the today's topic, right?
Yeah.
So, what have you been up to today? How's your week going?
Oh, not much. Just talk to a friend. Nothing special. Workout, regular stuff.
Right, I understand. So, do you live in the United States or do you live in Israel?
I live in Israel.
You live in Israel, gotcha. I was wondering because you're English. You sound pretty American.
I was born in the States and I lived in Canada most of my life.
I getcha. I getcha. I'll just announce to the Discord that the debate is on the way, and if they want to watch, they can come to the Twitch channel right here.
Yep.
Right. All right. Now to just link it. All right. So, just to start things off, right? Just to get a bit of an idea on where you stand on a few things, because I know you live in Israel, and as a
Yep.
result, and you moved there from North America too, so I'm guessing that you would identify as a Zionist. Is that correct?
Yes, I would support the idea of a Jewish state in the area around Jerusalem. Yeah.
Right. So not just a Jewish state in general, but specifically in around Jerusalem.
Yes.
Okay. Uh, so I believe, and along with a few others, but I'll say this right away. I believe that wait, that Israel is an apartheid state. Is that something you would agree with?
No.
Okay. If you don't agree that Israel is an apartheid state, then in that case, why do you disagree with the UN, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, renowned Holocaust survivors, apartheid survivors, etc.? Why do you think that when you say that Israel is not an apartheid state, why do you think that these are all bullshitting and that you are correct?
I believe that to have an apartheid state, you would have to oppress your own citizens, which Israel does not do.
That is not the
So,
definition of an apartheid state, though. There are fixed definitions for that. I could share it with you if you want, just so we
yes.
can operate within the same framework. There's three different definitions that would all apply to apartheid. They're all related to each other. Most apartheid states beat all of them, but let's. I'll link that to you in the general chat so you can have a look.
Yeah.
Apartheid. Let's see. Let's get it from the UN. I think they have the. Oh. Oh no, never mind. This is an entire dossier. Just a tiny second. I'm guessing you don't want to see a 100% per page document on what apartheid is. I'm guessing you want a bit more of a summarized version of it.
I would I would prefer something that I'd be able to read within the next 5 minutes or so.
All right, I found the first definition. I guess we can talk about that.
Yes.
It's in the general chat. Segregation on the grounds of on grounds other than race as
Yes.
one of them, and specifically in South Africa, that apartheid. A policy or system of segregation on discrimination on grounds of race. So it can be either
Mhm.
one. So it can either be of grounds other than race, such as religion, uh, political beliefs, or it can be on the
Is it
grounds of race.
legal segregation or personal segregation?
What would you consider legal segregation?
Segregation as in like laws that would prevent certain groups from, say, for example, entering a beach or entering a certain clinic or living in a certain place.
Um, all right, and enlighten me here. What groups do you think would be reasonable to not let healthcare or go to the beach?
None.
Because you refer to it as legal segregation, which means that this kind of segregation would be permissible in some situations, right? That's what you mean by legal.
In a sense, yes. For example, letting, say, uh, registered sex offenders on the beach where, or on the or in the pool, public pool specifically, where children would be, then that would be morally correct segregation. But then there's segregation on a racial basis, on a religious basis, which
You're
isn't
referring to
necessarily
pedophiles there specifically, right? If you're a convicted pedophile, you can't go to a beach.
pedophiles. Yes,
Okay, but you need to have committed an actual crime in order for that to be the case, right? You can't
Sure.
just
Yes.
be
Well,
you're
yeah,
you're
register.
born
That's
a
what I said.
certain way,
That's why I
you
said
belong to.
registered sex offender,
Oh, okay,
as
okay.
in
I missed that part. Sorry.
yeah, no problem.
So, but what the definition here is segregation on grounds either other than race or based on race, ethnicity, religion, etc. So,
Correct.
with this definition in mind, would you agree with me that Israel is an apartheid state?
Not necessarily. No.
Okay, so I will tell you a few reasons why this is. Number
By all means.
one, you heavily restrict the movement of the people living within the West Bank. You heavily restrict their movement, both in the West Bank and Gaza. If you are a Palestinian in Gaza and you have family, say, in the West Bank, it is almost impossible for you to get a permit to go there unless a few conditions are met, right? Those conditions are your family member died, there's a wedding, and that's it, right? Or you have college there, but then there's not a guarantee if
Or
you
you
can
have a
go
job.
back. So it's a bit of a risky situation. You can get a permit there, but there's no guarantee you'll be allowed to go back.
Right.
So you heavily segregate them based on that. If you live in the West Bank as a Palestinian, it is next to impossible for you to travel to, say, the beach, uh, just to use your example. But if you're a West Bank settler, you can go anytime you like without any sort of hassle. You also have within Israel proper, 20% of the people living there are of Arab descent. They're Palestinians.
Yes.
And these people cannot, or have at least have an extremely difficult time going into the West Bank. As for Israelis, though, the Jewish Israelis, they can go there and live there anytime they like. You also have the fact that a Palestinian is unable to live in an Israeli settlement. You have over 65 plus laws within you have 65 plus laws within Israel that directly discriminate against Palestinians. I can share with you all of them if you want. Some of them date back to the very foundation of Israel. Um, so, with all of so just so I don't info bomb you and give you a bit of a chance to
Yeah.
respond.
Yeah.
With what I have just said, with over 65 laws directly discriminating based on race, travel
I'd
restrictions,
like for you to
etc.
send a few of those laws.
Yeah, of course, there's an entire collection of they vary in degrees of discrimination. Some are straight up extremely clear. Others are more vague but can be used in a discriminatory manner. So I'll just send you all of them. Okay.
You sent it. Hold on.
I am pulling it up right here. Okay.
I would
Uh,
like to preface this since neither the people that considers themselves to be Palestinians within the West Bank or the Gaza Strip, the Israeli government has zero legal obligation towards them.
are you saying that
Since
Israel has no legal obligation towards Gaza or the West Bank?
the Israeli government does not have any legal obligation towards the people in Gaza, as in they're not responsible for those people. They're not legally obligated to give them any form of right of movement because they're not our citizens.
But that
It
is
is
where you
our
are
legal
wrong,
right.
though. You are wrong on that point because under international law, I'm not making this up. Under the UN international law, uh, not just but the West Bank, is occupied by Israel. You have IDF soldiers all over the place. You have Israeli settlements. I don't need to get
I
into
would like
that.
to
You already
preface
know
this
that.
by
But
the fact that I vehemently oppose any settlement in the West Bank.
okay, that's good. So we agree on something. That there's common ground. But
Yes.
specifically Gaza, because I think that is where you disputed a bit more.
Mm.
Uh, Gaza under international law. Let me address your points first and foremost. It is
Yes.
true that based on land, the IDF has no, prior to this conflict at least, had no ground control over Gaza. But
None.
that's not the only form of occupation, because occupation also counts if you control the sea and the air around this area, which Israel does. You control absolutely everything that comes in and out of Gaza, that includes from the sea, and that includes you also control their airspace completely, right? So it counts as a form of occupation, and as that's from the UN. And
Right.
as a result, under international law, you are obligated to provide them, to ensure that their human rights are being met, and to provide them with the basic essentials to survive. You are obligated to do that under international law, and by not doing
Which we
so,
do.
you would commit a war crime. No, you didn't, because you violate the right to free movement every day. This was before the war, even. So you don't.
For the war, given no, well, the free
Before the
movement,
war.
we don't allow the movement within our own state.
But you don't allow them to travel to the West Bank either, which also under international law should be considered the same entity,
Not freely, no. They'd have to get a permit, which
which
is
is next
understandable
to
given the
impossible to
situation.
get.
Right, but it's understandable given the situation.
It is understandable that you would get a permit if you look at it from your point of view. However, that should be under a shall issue basis and not on a you need to meet these ridiculously strict requirements in order to maybe get in. You can only visit your mother if she's dead. You can only go to the West Bank if there's a wedding taking place. You can only go to the West Bank on a one-way ticket if you have university. That is completely violating the right to free movement. Have you heard of the March of Return? It was a big protest
The
across 29.
yes, I've heard of it. Yeah.
The March of Return, yeah. Then you would know what the protest was about. It was a completely civilian protest by the people in Gaza. It was organized by a poet. And their goal was the right of free movement, to be able to travel more freely to the West Bank and also be able to travel to their former homes. That's currently taken by Israel, such as Acre, Beersheba, Jaffa, these former areas where they used to live, and these countless villages which have been completely erased from history. But
Acre,
and that is
Acre still has a massive Arab population, and I would know this because I've been to Acre countless times. I've straight up lived there for a very well for a limited amount of time, but I know the area, and it's very much it's a very much a vibrant city. You'll hear the call to prayer on it several times a day. I don't. I mean, I'm not
mashallah,
an expert on. Yeah, not an expert
mashallah.
on.
But there are a few cities where the commanders put in charge refuse to carry out their orders. One of them, the biggest one, is Nazareth, where the commanders during the Nakba received an order to evict every single Arab there, but out of a
Right.
moral basis they themselves refused, which David Ben Gurion is noted to have very much complained about. I remember watching the documentary and it talked about Ben Gurion visiting Nazareth after it was taken over. And he remarked, "Why are there so many Arabs there? You should have evicted them all." Because the commander there refused to carry out that order because they thought that was disgusting.
I would like
So
to point
these
out
were
the fact
orders.
that we had our own Nakba from our own version of the Nakba from the Arab states from that time. If you look at states like Iraq, Afghanistan actually it has a pretty funny story. It's less two Jews got kicked out because they were arguing way too much. Um,
I would love to address this in a bit, but once we're done with the apartheid discussion. But what I was going to say with the March of Return is that it was a completely civilian protest, completely legal. It was peaceful, no violence whatsoever. And throughout this time, Israeli snipers regularly shot at these civilians, both with snipers and explosives. Over 200 civilians got killed. I have a, if you want the specific details, I did write a bit of a piece on it here. Right. So it happened between 2018 and 19. Casualties were 222 innocent Palestinians, 46 of them kids. Injuries were a little bit more at 36,100 civilians, 8,800 were children. And this was primarily done by snipers and explosives launched by the IDF. These were completely civilians, not Hamas involvement whatsoever. Would this be done by a non-apartheid, completely democratic state? Does this happen in any other country?
right.
How would you explain doing this to unarmed civilians who all they protested, by the way, it doesn't really matter what they protest because they were peaceful. They should have the right to do this in a democratic state, which is how Israel refers to itself. It should uphold these values. It should be happy that these people are out protesting, not shooting at them with explosives, right?
So I'm looking into it right now because this is a subject I've heard about, but I haven't necessarily looked into.
I would be very surprised if Israeli schools are teaching this out. I would be shocked.
Well, I'm not in school, so not
Well,
anymore.
you were educated in Israel.
No, I lived most of my life in Canada.
Okay, well, so when did you move to Israel? Out of curiosity.
Year and a half ago.
Right, and how old are you now?
I'm 21.
21, okay. So it wasn't a family thing. You decided to
It
do
was a
the.
family thing. So my
Okay.
grandfather he had cancer, and all of us ended up moving up just to help him out. I was kind of in a financially weird place, but either way, it doesn't matter. That's the debate.
Yeah,
Ultimately, like
of course.
it was really for personal reasons, but it wasn't. Like
Welcome,
it
salam,
was
brother Mishka. How you
recent.
do? We
Yeah,
continue. I was just addressing a Muslim brother
yeah,
of mine who came into the chat. Keep going, please.
mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, but otherwise, it's really just a personal thing.
right, I understand. But so you are an Israeli citizen in that case, right?
Yes,
May I ask why you haven't been drafted? Just out of curiosity.
I work for in the public sector.
Oh, okay, so you're exempt from that. Gotcha.
Yes.
Um, Interesting. So you moved there for cancer. This isn't related to the debate, but just
Mhm.
FYI, if a person in the West Bank had a grandfather in Gaza who had cancer, they would not in a million years get a permit to go there. Just a thing to add in there.
Likely not.
Yeah, they would not. Only when the person is dead. Right? Only when the
Mhm.
grandfather has passed away. Then they'll probably get a permit and they can go there in a few months
You
at
do
best.
understand the reasons why. Like if we let them freely cross the area, unless we created some kind of tunnel, which would be not only extremely ineffective but extremely expensive and extremely time consuming. Like these
Human
were
rights need to be upheld even if it's inconvenient for you to do so. They do.
if you if we built a tunnel, first of all, if we built a tunnel between uh, Gaza and the West Bank, which is let me check how many kilometers.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله
This is
Thank you
just
for the follow,
as
Jaguar. Thank you so much.
this is the closest estimate between Gaza. Uh, it's about 20 kilometer, 20 to 25 kilometers of tunnel essentially.
You could also
Um,
have a road going, a one-way road without turns going there. You can have soldiers patrolling it, maybe walls, top surveillance, all
yes,
that.
but ultimately, once you do reach Gaza, sorry, the West Bank, it's a lot easier to traverse the area. Say a terrorist wanted to, commit terroristic act. It would be a lot easier to do for him to do so from the West Bank than it would be from the Gaza Strip.
So even if there are hypothetical terrorists who do want to do these things, you would still be engaging in collective punishment by preventing anybody from going across there, and you're still violating human rights, by the
Well,
way.
because it's the most paranoid country on earth. I don't know what you expect. We were surrounded by people who hate us. So
Yeah, but again, in that case, you
ultimately, our
can.
security system has to be extremely discriminatory, and I will happily admit that because that's how we have to, like, we're forced to work this way.
Well, I'm sure that is something that people tell themselves to like get through it. However, at the end of the day, in that case, instead of saying that you are human rights champions, like some of you describe yourselves, which you're objectively not, you have a terrible record for it. You can at least say that yes, we violate human rights every single day. We do it intentionally, but it's more convenient for us to do so. That would be the honest thing to say. Right? We're violating it out of
I would say that
convenience.
Israel has made mistakes prior to this. Yes,
It's
and
six.
this
They were
isn't
not
something you've
mistakes.
there
Mistakes are unintentional.
mistakes in the sense that they completely fucked up in terms of human rights. Like when they
That was intentional, not a mistake.
depends, because ultimately, like I mean, mistakes are defined as things that aren't, well, they could be intentional, but ultimately, like they shouldn't have been done in the first place. Even
All right. So
uh,
if hypothetically if Hitler survived, he murdered 6 million Jews. So if he did that, right, which was bad,
it was a
obviously,
mistake.
and
Of course, it was a mistake,
so
but
he
it's not an
did, so he
accidental.
did
It's
that.
not an. There's intentional mistakes, and then there's unintentional mistakes.
If you don't mind, I'd like to finish up my example, please. Thank you. But if he did that, he did that extremely intentionally. There were strong systems in place to carry that out. Uh, but if he did that, he killed 6 million Jews or whatever, and then he admitted, okay, my bad. I regret doing this. Like, was that a mistake, or was he just regretting it? Right? There's a difference between regretting something and it being a mistake, because that was completely intentional. He did this over the course of
Yes,
multiple
correct.
years. It was very well planned. And throughout all that time, it was like, this is great. We need to do this. This is how we should do it. And then he comes out and says, my bad, guys. This wasn't good. Like, this isn't a mistake. This is an admission.
There have been human rights violations by the Israeli government. I'm again, I'll happily admit that this isn't something that I
You are very correct.
I try to be as impartial as possible about this, but frankly, like from my viewpoint, there is a lesser evil here.
Okay, so, and I'm guessing you think the lesser evil is Israel.
The Israeli government, yeah.
Okay, so why are they the lesser evil and the Palestinians the evil, the stronger evil?
We enforce our own laws in the sense that so say for example, you have a soldier that kills an innocent Palestinian civilian. Uh, Obviously, you won't hear about this, but they do go to jail. This isn't something we take lightly. We have a very specific code of engagement, and the soldiers who do not follow that are punished.
This is with cases where they can objectively prove that it's a civilian. If the IDF soldier says it was in the middle of a raid, it was in the middle of the night, we didn't really see, so we shot, then it's all good, right? Then it's all good, actually. It's all good. And this happened very recently in the West Bank as a result of the October 7th attacks. There were multiple raids on many places within the West Bank.
Yep.
And in one of these incidents, there was a father and a son. There was an entire family walking down the road when this all began. And the son went through a crossroads. Right? He crossed a road. There was soldiers there. They shot him. The father ran up to him and tried to perform first aid, tried to resuscitate his son. And they shot him as well. They weren't carrying any weapons, just regular civilians. And this is not justifiable under any means. Because even if they thought even if they thought these were combatants, soldiers should be trained to tell the difference between what is a civilian and what is a combatant. And if they can't tell this, then this would just show that the IDF training is piss poor, right? Which isn't great if you're an occupying power. You know?
Did those soldiers go to jail?
No.
I'd have to check that.
Right. There was a video on that I saw the surveillance. He was walking down the road, and he just got shot. Father got shot
sure
too.
I've seen at least
The son died. The father survived. Didn't they
what
bomb a
Mohammed
school
al-Dura?
yesterday, killing 200 people? Yeah, they did. They did bomb a school yesterday, killing 200 people.
Okay, no,
Complete massacre.
That's a different story. Hold on.
I was just replying to a chatter here.
Yeah. I see no news of this. Father and son killed. Both of them were killed?
No, the son was killed. The father survived. The son was killed in the hospital, I believe. Died of his injuries. There are also... Let me pull up my source sheet. Right. The last person I debate, you as an Israeli might have heard of him. He was a big Israeli streamer. But I debated him a few weeks ago, and I mean, I was right about everything that I said, but he asked for sources, which I didn't have saved. So I learned my lesson, and now I have a list of any source that you'd want. So just let me know. I'll provide it for you. No issue.
Yeah.
Right. So, civilians killed in the West Bank. There's quite a good amount of it. There's Mossad themselves admitting that, an ex-Mossad chief saying that Israel is an apartheid state. Yeah, I guess he got so old that he didn't care whether he said it or not. He had his retirement check either way. Let's see. All right, so I have a few sources if you do want to see it. Not of this specific incident, but incidents overall. Right. I'll send it over in... Actually, I'll create a specific debate chat so that it doesn't get cluttered with other messages. No, debate... Alright, I'll send this one here. There's another one too. Alright. This is in the West Bank, by the way, not Gaza.
Okay, those 100 Palestinians were killed.
This is an old source, by the way. This was a month ago. This was a month ago.
This
The
is
numbers
a month ago, but like, is there a specific how'd you say it? I'm sorry, English is my third language, so
you speak it pretty well. You speak it pretty well. Don't worry about it.
Hold on. There is there like a differentiation between the Palestinians that are terrorists and the Palestinians that are, civilians?
Yes,
Because
there is. The main thing is that
the photo here, like I can clearly see the Hamas flag. or at least it's a green flag with some white Arabic text on it. I'm gonna assume it's a Hamas flag. I'm not sure. You're the expert here, so.
Okay, so just because at a funeral or at a
Oh, they're carrying guns.
just because there's a funeral progression where some terrorists are involved doesn't mean that the person who was actually killed was a terrorist. It could be a political stunt where they want to show the people, hey, the Israelis killed this person, we stand with them, we are against the enemy. It could be a very big political stunt, and these are very
Possibly,
effective.
but they have M16s, so.
That doesn't mean the person who got killed had an M16. No?
No, it
These are
doesn't.
the
but
people at the funeral
The
progression.
funeral itself clearly does not show.
Oh,
any
by the way, the
safety.
person who was killed, one of them is shown, and it's a literal child. If you would have a look,
on the left, yeah.
yeah, on the left. I don't think that seemed like a terrorist. I don't want to show that on my.
Are you
I'll scroll
sure
up
that's
a
a
bit.
child? Because it looks like a beard on the chin.
You know how fast they grow facial hair, right?
No, I mean fair enough, but I don't know. It's the thing with Middle Eastern people, like you can never tell how old they are.
They can never tell, but this person.
He looks I mean, I would say 18, maybe 19, but definitely not older than 20.
Let's see. Yeah, I agree it's not older than 20. When I look at this person, though, I think child. He looks 14, 15 to me, right? And most Arabs that I've seen do have facial hair by the time of 14, 15.
Fair enough, yeah.
So, facial hair, if you have a European or especially an Asian person, then it's a big indicator. But when it comes to Arabs, I mean, might as well be 8.
Are you European?
I am primarily of European descent, yes.
Interesting. So
we
you're
exist
from
too.
Netherlands or Germany or Netherlands? That's my guess.
I live in Sweden.
That's the third guess.
There's a number of us here. We're growing. We're growing.
Yeah.
There's new faces at the mosque every single day.
How's Sweden?
How is Sweden? Depends on the context which you're asking. But we can get sidetracked for like 5 minutes, and we'll get back to it, right?
Yeah, I'm
so
sorry. I tend to do
what's
that.
the last guy did it too, but at a much higher pace. But what thing about Sweden do you want to ask about specifically?
The weather.
Shit, it's garbage.
I miss the fucking cold, dude. I miss it so much.
Bro, I am the other way around, right? The way I see it, while I don't think the existence of the state of Israel in the state of Palestine is justifiable, I do have to say the weather there is quite incredible. Mediterranean weather, you can never really complain about it. It's perfect. It's perfect.
I melt. I mean, I told you I'm Canadian, so.
Well, I've lived my whole life in Sweden, most of it at least, and I hate the cold. So I like warm weather.
I would pay thousands just to feel the breeze of minus 30 degrees again.
Well, my dear friend, I'm sure there's a Palestinian who would love to have your home if you return to Canada. They're waiting. They're waiting.
They probably are, but they're not gonna get there.
Of course. If it wasn't it that famous video that went viral? If I don't steal it, somebody else will. Well, that's very true. If you leave, someone new from Brooklyn is going to take it. This is how it works.
Probably.
The Palestinian who owned it before is not even on the list. But aside from that, was there any other Sweden questions that you have to ask about? They would like to know.
Is it as much of an impersonal shithole as I hear it is?
As a what?
Impersonal shithole.
Oh, it is absolutely. The people here are extremely antisocial. Or asocial, I should say. Antisocial, that's a completely different thing. But they're very asocial. That is why my main place of social interaction is the mosque, because Arabs are quite the opposite. But yeah, if you're interacting with regular Swedes, 9 times out of 10, unless you have really something bonding you, it will be the most awkward conversation in your life. Trust me. You're not getting anywhere with that people.
However, people in general.
However, if you completely true. However, whenever I go to the mosque, even if it's a person I've never seen before, we shake hands, we talk, and it's like we've known each other for a year, right? Instantly, you get along better. So I much prefer that better. Much more social. Much more social.
definitely something similar you'll see here in Israel. People are very.
Is that the same for the Zionists who moved there yesterday? Have they
No,
assimilated into the Middle Eastern
I would
culture?
say it is. I would say it is. I mean, it's a slightly more mellow personality compared to the Israelis, but I think that the ones that do end up moving have some kind of similar psyche that they just either get used to it or just adapt to it.
I mean, fair enough. You adapt to your environment. If your environment is very social, unless you have like something internal in your brain making you an introvert, you'll probably adapt to that as well. You probably
Yep.
will. I'm very different when I'm around an awkward Swede than if I'm around a fellow Muslim at the mosque. Very different.
Right.
But moving back to the topic of discussion here.
Right.
Where were we? We addressed like three different things here. The goalposts were moved 3 times, I believe.
Yeah.
Do you remember what we talked about last, or should we just go back to apartheid?
Let's go back to apartheid.
All right. So, with all of this in mind,
Assalamu
since
alaikum
you,
wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you guys?
King Boom, thank you for the follow, much appreciated. Thank you for the support. But with the apartheid, with all that you know, I did link to you the 65 plus laws that do discriminate. That is more than enough to claim that it's an apartheid state.
Okay, so the law for let's go through with the first one: the law of revocation of citizenships or residency of a terrorist. Okay.
What do they consider
first-
a terrorist is the important part here, or a potential terrorist? Not all of these are inherently discriminatory, but most of them are being used as it. I remember seeing a law that said something along the lines of independent townships have the right to accept people to preserve the cultural and ethnic integrity of that township, and may use whatever means they want to do so, which, I mean, can be used to just say, hey, if you have brown skin, you don't fit in with our cultural identity, so off you go, right? Most of these are extremely vague laws that can very easily be used to legally discriminate people.
So it says here, if all of these following circumstances apply to a person, the interior minister shall inform them within 7 working days of his intention
Sion,
to request that the
let's
court
talk about
revoke
the
his Israeli
person's
citizenship.
arguments and not the person's features.
A, that person was convicted of an offense, and the court that convicted him determined that the offense is an act of terror, and if the offense was committed prior to the entry into force of the 216 counterterrorism law, it is a terrorist act based on the facts determined in the court's verdict on the matter, or he was convicted of an offense under the sections 97 to 99 of the
Could you link me the
penal law.
specific one that you are reading?
This is the first one.
Law of revocation of citizenship, arrest and discipline
Yeah.
of terrorist who receives compensation for carrying out a terrorist act.
Yeah.
Let's see. If all these following circumstances prison details, inform them within 7 days of work and the intention to request that they revoke his Israeli citizenship. Context. Context. The law was passed by a far-right extremist government in February 2023, was passed with the clear intent to target and harm Palestinians. During the Knesset discussions concerning the bill, for instance, MK Hanok Milwitsky stated, I prefer Jewish murderers to Arab murderers, and as a general rule in the Jewish state, I prefer having Jews to disloyal Arabs here. During the same concession, Otzma Yehudit MK Limor Son Har Melek. You may be laughing at my pronunciation here, but I'll go with it anyway. Who was among the drafters of the law, stated that the view that citizenship should be revoked for any terrorist who kills Jew on the grounds that he is a Jew, adding that the appropriate punishment of such a crime should be death. Interesting that it only targets people who kill Israelis just for the purpose of being just for the reason of being Israelis, right, and not the many Israelis who kill Palestinians for no other reason than them being Palestinians. It seems to be very,
which I think is unfair, but
I agree. But
frankly,
we're not talking about the fairness. We're not talking about how it should be here. We're talking about how it is, and I agree. This is very unfair. It's good that you see it that way too. But if you have an apartheid state, even if you think this is wrong, it shouldn't be that way. If it is that way, then it would be correct to say this is an apartheid state right now. Maybe if you get your way, it isn't going to be anymore. But right now, with this in mind,
I'd say it's a discriminatory law. It wouldn't make an apartheid state as a whole.
You have 64 more laws to go through, my friend.
Let's go.
You want to go
The
through all of
Hametz
them?
law. Yeah, the
Let's.
Hametz law.
I think we should go to the very back, to the where the
Well,
to the
there's 4
very to
pages.
page
You want to
number
go for the?
4.
Let's go
Go
for the
through the
full
last
page.
one. It has 7.
Okay, well,
Eight,
let's go
I
for the
think it
second
was.
law because this one I find very interesting.
Okay.
The Hametz law, the Patients' Right Act, Amendment Number 13, 2024. This grants hospital directors complete authority and discretion to ban the entry of leavened food, hametz, into hospitals on Israel during the 7-day Jewish holiday of Passover. So this is a very big issue even amongst Israelis. I'm sure you haven't heard of this because obviously it doesn't go into the news, or at least not the international news, but there's a very
Do educate me.
large religious divide in Israel. In the sense that I mean, there's like 1,000 different subjects. Just one of them. The buses don't work on Saturdays, and Saturday being a Shabbat.
Yeah, I know about
Like
them.
it's a religious law. It's a very stupid thing, and people are constantly fighting against it amongst other things. For example, the fact that ultra orthodox people cannot be drafted. Like they're not going to be drafted, and it's genuine. It boils the blood of anyone left of center within the Israeli political sector. So
Yeah, I've heard about that part, that they refuse to serve in the IDF, which I think great on them. Honestly, I think that's great on them. But from your perspective, I put myself in the shoes of a Zionist or Netanyahu himself. I can get why that might be a bit annoying.
yeah, I mean most of the parties are Zionist. There's just like maybe one or two.
Well, of course. Otherwise, I'd think they would act on what they believe and leave. So I would expect
There's
most people who are in Israel to be Zionist,
yeah, I'd say so. I
because that
mean,
is how the whole nation
depends what
was
you
founded.
consider to be Zionist, right? Because some people take the word Zionist and blow it out of proportion.
Zionist means, when I call somebody a Zionist today, it means that they are fine with the Jewish state within occupied Palestine and the means of establishing it. I add the means of establishing it because it wasn't established peacefully in any way. And if you think that the current state of Israel is justified, then you also think that those actions were justified, and how it came about to be, which I think it isn't. If you do any level of research as to what the Israelis did to establish the state of Israel, and you look past all the Zionist propaganda out there, you will find out that this was pure ethnic displacement. They showed up basically out of nowhere, forced people out of their homes. They demanded half of the land, despite them making up the minority of the population in basically the entire country. When the Arabs didn't like that, obviously, all of a sudden it's their fault, and now they deserve to be oppressed because they got this great opportunity to keep 48% of their land, despite them making up the majority in the entire land, right? Not to mention the absolutely horrific atrocities committed by groups like the Irgun in the countless villages across Palestine, particularly Deir Yassin, which I don't know if you've heard of it. Have you heard of what happened at Deir Yassin?
And what?
Deir Yassin, it was a Palestinian village close to Jerusalem. It's been completely demolished now because there were 400 villages in Palestine.
This was in 48.
This was in 48, yes. But there were over 400 villages in Palestine, which used to be there, but aren't anymore because they were completely massacred, and any trace of the buildings there were completely demolished. It was
Right.
it was forested. They planted forests all over it, so you couldn't live there anymore. You couldn't go back. And those that did get spared got all their cultural heritage removed from them and turned into Jewish cities instead. One of these places was Deir Yassin. Do you know what happened there by the Urgun?
120 people died, right?
I believe it was around
107.
I believe it was around 400. I could be wrong.
Well, it's disputed. Wikipedia says it's disputed.
That should tell you a lot. 100
Right.
over, right? So 100 minimum.
Over 100. Yeah.
So a minimum 100. But let me tell you some of the things that were reported to happen there. By people who survived, right? So, and admitted by the people who participated in it, because the Irgun was the ultra radical Zionists there, and they were more than happy with what they did. But let's see, where to begin. I listed all of this in a TikTok. So I'll just list off what I brought with there. But essentially, one of the things were top 5 facts about Israel. Number 5. One of the things was throwing children into the baking oven. I remember this very well from the documentary that I watched. Essentially, what happened there was 3 Irgun fighters went into the bakery and they tried to force the father to throw the son into the baking oven, burning him alive. When the father cried his eyes out and refused, they threw the child themselves, made the father watch, and then threw him right after, killing him as well. They brutally mutilated the people they caught and sexually assaulted them. They locked families in their houses and blew the houses up afterwards, killing them all from inside. They took captives from the city, paraded them around Jerusalem as if they're hunting trophies, and then executed them right afterwards. So that was just a few things that happened. You can look all of this up. Many of the people who did this admitted to this.
What source are you taking this from?
Which one do you choose?
Any of them.
Right.
Well, which one is the least...
Dear Yassin massacre, atrocities. Let's see. I'll just show you a few. Let's see here. There's also a full documentary. It's like 2 hours long. You don't expect you to watch all of it, but it goes into heavy detail. You can watch it on your free time, though, so I'll link it to you anyway.
Yeah.
Let's see. I have 2 here. Blocked IP. Okay. You're not getting one of the sources because they don't like my ad blocker. Haaretz specifically. But you can get this one. Right. I'll find the documentary for you as well. I'll DM it to you so you can watch it on your own time. It's very educational. Very educational.
I know that I can speak for myself when I say that I totally condemn this, but
that means you're sane. That means you have a moral compass.
No, I mean anyone with a sane mind would condemn this.
These didn't. They are very proud of it.
Who did?
The people who carried it out. I mean, they weren't robots. They weren't robots. They were people who thought this was the best thing ever. Somehow.
There are extremists on both sides, and I think that the ones that carry... I mean, honestly, I totally support the death penalty for the people that carry this out, because human life is human life, and if you can't value the sanctity of human life on one end, why would you value it on the other end?
I would agree on you on. I would agree with you that human life has a lot of sanctity that should be respected on both sides. Civilian casualties overall are completely unacceptable. Doesn't matter who the civilians are. Within Sharia, which we as Muslims are at least meant to follow, the Prophet laid out very clear laws of war. You cannot harm civilians. You cannot harm elderly. You cannot harm women, children, non-combatants. Even if it is a combatant, if he surrenders, you cannot harm him. You can take him prisoner, but you need to treat him well. You cannot destroy nature, even, for strategic purposes. So we have a lot of laws of war that we need to go through. Now, granted, most of the...
Which Hamas did not follow.
Yeah, they did not follow it, not one bit. I will admit to that, 100%. Neither did a lot of the radical Islamist groups who come up in the news. But this is what the Prophet did, right? And if Hamas goes against that, that doesn't mean that this is the true Islam. It simply means they didn't follow this part. But according to Sharia, you cannot harm civilians. Let's see. It was a documentary. I believe I might have saved this somewhere. Right. I will, inshallah, I'll find it right after this. But it was a 2-hour documentary. It's one of the most famous ones out there. I will find it to you afterwards so that you can have a look
no problem.
at it. Right. But yeah, this is how, going back to the point that I was making, looking at how the state of Israel was founded, I would 100% consider you a Zionist if you think that it was appropriate to do these things. Because by saying that Israel had a right to establish itself in the way they did, you're saying that they had a right to engage in the means.
I just say they have the right to establish themselves, not necessarily in the way they did, but
this is how they established themselves.
I think that the way they did establish it was also reciprocated on the Arab end of this. So, I do believe that.
Well, hypothetically here, let's say the Sudanese.
I'm sure you've seen the Where are your Jews? Have you seen that video, right?
I have seen that video. Yes.
Yes. So
To
we
that
all
I
know
will
what
ask:
happened
where are
to
the
them.
Arabs of Tel Aviv? Where are the Arabs of
Yeah.
Beersheba?
Yeah, in the area.
Most of them were deported. Vast majority were. There's a reason
Most of them.
Gaza, an area just twice the size of Washington D.C., has 2 billion people. It's terribly overcrowded. Over
Oh yeah, it is.
700,000 Palestinians were displaced in the year of the Nakba, sent to either the West Bank or Gaza. Only a tiny minority actually remained, and that is the 20% of Arabs that are Israel proper today. So to that, I will just reply: okay, where did these Arabs go? Did they just decide to pack their stuff up randomly and just move away from their ancestral home where they had been living for centuries to move into a refugee camp in Gaza? Did they just decide to do that on a whim? No, of course not. So where did they go?
Well, I would say that 2 wrongs don't make a right. They just settled the score.
No, but it means that if you think this is okay, you really can't complain about them hypothetically doing that to you.
No, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying the score has been settled.
Since when were there scores in this matter? You said yourself 2 wrongs don't make a right.
Well, yeah, but they settled the score. Just that doesn't mean it's right. I don't say that either of them.
Well, you having a
don't say-
score, you this.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
Thank you so much
the
for the
score is
follow-ship.
even. We are even.
No,
That's what
you having a dispute with Algeria for deporting Jews doesn't mean give you the right to evict a bunch of Palestinians, right? That's a score you have with Algeria. You can't just take out your anger with them
that's not-
on the Palestinian
Well, that's the
people.
thing. I didn't evict the Palestinians. This was 75 years ago. I wasn't even
Well,
alive.
of course, right? I'm grouping you in with the Israelis
Right.
here.
Yeah.
Right, but if the Sheikh, how are you doing? Glad to have you here, brother. But if the Zionists have an issue with the deportations that the Algeria did with some other Jews, then they should bake that dispute with Algeria. They shouldn't evict a bunch of Palestinians who had absolutely nothing to do with it. That's not settling the score, right? That's if you wrong me and as a result I beat up a random person in the street. Like that's not justice. That is me being a complete psychopath. That doesn't solve anything.
No, technically, if we go by analogies, then you'd beat me up, and then the score. The score settled. Sorry.
Yeah, but it wasn't the Palestinians who deported you, though.
Right.
It wasn't the Palestinians who deported the Jews. In fact, when the Jews
Well,
came initially, they were
It's not like we
welcomed
could
with open
deport the
arms.
people from Algeria, right?
No, but those are the people you have a score with. You can't just say, okay, you robbed me, I can't get you, so that justifies me beating this random person up in the street. Like, no, my score is still with you, and me punishing this random person doesn't help with that, right? It doesn't.
But frankly, I think it's like fair enough. I mean, if we both
Fair
did
enough.
it, right? No, I mean not necessarily the massacre part, but the eviction, in the sense that, listen, we're not getting along, right? Say me and a roommate, we're not getting along, and the
Okay.
roommate has his own like sort of clique living with him, and I have my own clique living with me. We're kind of like we're kind of in the same room, right? We're in one living. This is one living room. So what we do is our cliques are mixed. I move his clique to his side, and he moves his clique to my side, and we separate the room. I think that's like if this was
I
an
think you
ideal,
are.
if
I
this
think
was
you're
an
bringing a
ideal
very
world,
complicated solution.
if this was an ideal world, this is what would have happened in 1948 and 1947.
I think the thing most normal people would do if you don't get along with if you move into a place and your roommate doesn't like you and there's problems, I think the most common thing you would do is you would find a different room instead of completely architecturally changing the entire home. That's not really something that happens. If you move into some place
Except for the
where you
fact that
have
the
your
roommate
roommate
sold me that.
and yeah, but they sold it to you to have like a kibbutz or a community. They didn't sell it to you to have your own country, right?
No,
That's a completely different thing. If I
They
buy
sold
a
the
farm
land.
or a ranch in Texas, like let's say I go to Texas and I buy a piece of farmland, does that mean that that is now my country? Do I now have the right to declare that the independent state of Hussein? No, I don't. That is still under American sovereignty, objectively, right? So
Right.
that's not really an argument here. They didn't sell it to you so you could make your own country.
But it wasn't necessarily under Palestinian sovereignty either. This was the British mandate. The only
So colonialism makes that right.
No, I'm saying that legally it makes it right, and that they had no claim to the land apart from their own like I mean like they owned the land as in how would you say it? They owned the land as in they bought the land and now it's their land.
The only region Britain had control over it was because they
They
had
took over the
defeated
Ottomans.
they
Yes, so
defeated
well
the
aware.
Ottoman Empire, and then they colonized a bunch of parts in the Middle East. And I am not a pro-colonialist person. I don't think that they colonized this place, therefore they can do whatever they want. But it is a proper
Well, the
argument
Ottomans kind of
because
colonized the place too.
but under Ottoman rule, the people had a good amount of autonomy. Right? You didn't have any of these issues under Ottoman times. Everybody lived really well under the Ottoman times. There was very little discrimination, if any. It was a very
Yeah, I mean,
religiously
if
diverse and
anything,
tolerant place, and ethnically too.
no, right.
Jews lived in under harmony there too. The Mirhasi Jews, if that's how you pronounce it, the Arab Jews.
Until we didn't. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of the
No,
1929 Hebron massacre,
the
right? This is
Mizrahi
before the
Jews
Nazis.
always got along with the locals until
Did it?
the Ashkenazi showed up. The Ashkenazi Jews, they stirred the pot a little bit when they formed militias and openly declared that they wanted to take it over and displace everybody. That's just in their own writings, right? And
Right.
I'm sure that if you move to a brand new country and you make tons of books saying that you want to ethnically displace everybody there and kill anybody who doesn't agree, I'm sure the local populations wouldn't be too big of a fan of you, right? I'm sure that's reasonable. So the Mizrahi Jews, they themselves describe that when they lived there side by side with the Palestinians, there was no issue. There was no issue. There was never an issue. The issue was when the Ashkenazi came from Europe and North America saying, "This is our land. By the way, this is what we're going to do to you. We're going to evict you and we're going to kill you if you resist." And now we're forming militias, right? Armed militias, right? That causes issues, as I'm sure you understand.
Right, and I'm sure that prior to the establishment of the Nazi Party and their own ideals, that there wouldn't really have been that much of a reason for a Jewish state because we could have just moved to, say, the States, right?
Okay, so why does
But
obviously let's make this clear. The Holocaust was a horrible atrocity, never should have happened,
of
right?
course, yeah.
But why does Germany wronging you means that you can go and punish the Palestinians for that who had nothing to do with it?
No, well, we had to go somewhere, right? And the UK only let like 50,000 a year of us go.
I think the better solution for that would be this is something that I think would be completely justifiable. The Germans wronged you, so while Germany was being carved up left and right, why couldn't you have taken like the French part that they took from Germany and just made that into the Jewish state, or any of the other parts that was carved up? I
Well, I
think
guess
that would
this
have
is
been
where
much better.
the two parts of history collide, right? Because the Zionist movement was a slowly growing one, and it promised a Jewish state. So therefore, like people are lazy, right? This is like people are naturally lazy. So instead of creating their own movement to, say, have Belgium become Israel, right? Instead of that, hey, we have this sort of claim
Belgium would
to
have been
this land.
unjustifiable too. I'm specifically referring to
No,
Germany.
I mean, no, I'm just making an example out of nothing. Where was I at?
You were making an example of that people are lazy.
Right. So people are lazy. So they're not gonna they're not necessarily going to want to create their own movement. So they see this movement, the Zionist movement, and it's growing in the area. It's growing in amongst Jews. What do? They join the movement and they go to Israel, or at least they try to go to Israel. Obviously, since the British has control over the British mandate, they only let like 50,000 of them a year come.
Yeah, because that was before. The Arabs didn't like
No,
all
no,
these people showing up.
this is during like the whole German rule of Germany and like the slowly establishing Holocaust, I guess.
Oh yeah, yeah. This was way before World War II kicked off. The Zionist movement started back in the 1880s. Like
Oh
it's
yeah,
old.
I'm just saying that the kind of the two things made a combination, which ultimately created the state of Israel.
Right, and what I am saying is that if they were to make this state in Germany, which I'm sure they would have been perfectly capable to do, considering that it was already being carved up left, right, and center, that would have been fair.
Mhm.
Germany was the one who committed the genocide on you. They did the Holocaust, and if they received the punishment from that by giving you a state, that would be fine, right? But you can't just use that, the Holocaust, as an excuse to go to a people who had nothing to do with it and say, okay, the Germans wronged us, therefore you Palestinians on a completely different continent have to pay the price for that. So you have to give us half your land because we showed up now and we want it, right? That's not reasonable at all, right? You can't just go into somebody else's land, still be the minority, and then say, hey, we're taking
Well,
half
not
of
necessarily.
this.
We established the kibbutzes. Like we established our own cities essentially.
You
Like
were still
the
a
land.
minority at the time of the
Yeah, we were a
first UN
minority,
plan.
but the land. You have to understand the land in 1948 was like nothing. There was, I mean, current day Israel, you can't drive 20 minutes without seeing a village. Back then, it was just empty land and a few cities and a few settlements. That was it.
There were there were, I believe, almost or a little bit over 1 million Palestinians already living there, and
Yeah,
hundreds
well,
of
yeah, but
villages,
they
already
were all like
established cities.
right, but the city, like all the population was inside the cities.
There were multiple villages too, right? They're not
No,
there
of course,
anymore
but like it
because
wasn't.
they were
I'm saying it
demolished.
wasn't nearly as widespread as it is in Israel at the moment.
Well, that's because population growth. As the standard of living increases, population
Well, yeah,
usually
exactly. I'm
increases
just saying, like,
along
we
with it.
didn't steal any land. We just bought it, and then we took it and we use it for our own purposes.
E- you stole like basically all of the land that you have today, right? Israel, when the
We
UN
conquered.
plan came along,
No, we
was
conquered.
that is not a legitimate conquest whatsoever. But
It was. They attacked us, and we took the land back.
you openly said that you wanted to ethnically displace them and kick them from their homes because you had a divine right to this place. That's not a legitimate casus belli, so to say. That's not a legitimate reason, and they had all the reason in the world to resist these attempts, as any reasonable person would, right? The UN partition plan didn't include, oh, all of these kibbutzes all form a collective Israel. That wasn't the plan, right? And all of the land that Israel was going to get in that partition plan, they were the
It was
minority
half of it.
still. It was almost half, right? But it was
Almost
it
half.
was a
I mean,
tiny
you can't. It's
it was
lands.
a tiny majority, but the
Mhm.
majority were still Palestinians. The majority in these lands were still Palestinians. So you can't say that you were surprised that the Palestinians didn't like this, right? It's more than logical that they decided to fight back against this. It's
I
more
mean,
than logical.
we got a desert. I don't think there's that many. Well, there's a Bedouin tribe, but there's not that many people in the desert. Like prior to
You
Israel,
got most of the arable land in this UN plan. You didn't just get desert, right? Most of the arable land was in the Israeli borders. That is another big reason why the Palestinians resisted so much.
hold on. I'm just looking up the map.
No issue.
And that's not necessarily because they got all the area north of Haifa, and the area north of Haifa it's pretty mountainous, but it's very arable.
I'm not saying they got no arable land, but I'm saying you got most of it. You said that
No,
all
right,
you
but
got
like
was desert, which isn't true. You got most of the arable land. They got arable land too, don't get me wrong, but you got most of it, right? So you saying that you only got some shitty desert is not true. You got by far the better deal.
well, the Palestinians got most of the land in the north, essentially. The Negev desert is like a total. I mean, it's a desert. There's not much there. There's like nothing there, actually. Like, I've been there several times, and it's just any. You see Beersheba on the map?
I do, yeah.
Anywhere like above 20 kilometers north of it, and all of south of that is just desert. There's nothing there.
Yeah, but you see this coast area?
The coast area,
Extremely
yes.
arable land. Extremely, right? Normally, the closer you walk to water, the more arable your land is. So yes, you did get
Of
a
course.
bunch of desert, but you also at the same time got the most arable land. This is a objective fact here. You did get most of the arable land, and you
Most
also
of the
got
arable
most
land
of the
is in the north,
coastline.
so yeah.
Yeah, which you got. They got a tiny portion of it here, but you by far got most of the north. So again, you saying that you only got a little desert, that is not true whatsoever. You got the best deal here by far,
Right.
and it's not even a competition. And that is even assuming that this is fair, because it isn't. Again, you have a minority of people getting over half of the land where they are also a minority. Like, I don't think I have to explain like just how unreasonable this is to expect that you can just show up somewhere, move a bunch of people in and say, hey, I know you've been living here centuries and everything, but like 2,000 years ago, this was ours, and Hitler did a Holocaust, so we're taking your home now. Bye bye. Like that's not fair. And that is essentially what happened. This wasn't peaceful in any way. They were very clear about it. So thinking that the Arabs were stupid for resisting this plan is how should I say this in a nice way?
I
It's
wouldn't call it. I
ridiculous.
wouldn't necessarily call it stupid, but I mean, given the people there, I'm not sure what they expected. They expected to win, but I'm not sure they had a contingency plan in case they lost, and they did lose. And the Israeli army being it is, at the moment it was just a Haganah,
The Urgun as well.
Irgun
Don't
and
forget the
Haganah.
genocide, the genocidal ones here. The Haganah did atrocities too, but not to the same extent.
It was the Irgun and the.
You cut out there for a second.
It was the Irgun and the Haganah.
Yes. Irgun did by far the most terrorist atrocities, but
yes.
Haganah also did things like deport almost all of the entire Arab population from Beersheba. That was the Haganah's doing. One of them described it themselves. In her own words, she woke up one day and her commander came into her barracks and said, "Hey, today we're deporting all of the Arabs." And they got a bunch of buses, forced them onto them, and drove them into Gaza, where they remain till this day.
Right.
They thought they were going to go back to their homes. They thought this was just temporary. Big lie, it wasn't. This is from an old Haganah veteran who took part. Again, this is all in the documentary that I'm going to send you later. I think you'll find it very interesting. Right, so we have gone
so
to...
the thing is...
You can continue.
The thing is, once you do attack a nation, they have the right to take their land back. Not necessarily their land, but they have the right to take land, because you forfeit all rights once you invade the country. Because once you decide to try to take their land, they're obviously going to push back.
Who truly invaded, though? I think that's the question. Right? You kind of showed up there, and boom, you just took over half of their land. Right? By the
legally,
UN
it was our
partition.
land. Legally, it was our land. By the UN partition, it was legally our land, and the borders were created. Sorry, the borders were established by that point, and instead they decided to violate those borders and invade the country.
Well, yes, because at the time those borders did not exist, and again, the majority of they were just lines drawn on the map when the UN partition plan came along.
At the moment, yes.
And in all of the lands that you got yourself was also majority Palestinians. So it was a very badly drawn map, and I believe a big amount of nations opposed it, thinking the logical thing, which was that this is ridiculous. But of course, the United States, which has a lot of power within the UN, a terrible amount of power, went ahead and said, "This is good, let's do it," and it happened. And this was, again, you have to look at it from a humanitarian perspective, right? And you have to look at it from the point of the people living there. And it would, any person with even an atom's weight of self-respect would resist such an oppressive and horrible plan, which strips them away from the land where they are a majority. They're not even the majority there. It's not like the land where they got, with the exception of maybe downtown Tel Aviv and the kibbutzes, right? But in the places where they were themselves a majority, the minority is then coming there, kicking them out, saying, "Hey, we got legal backing here. I know you're the majority in the cities, everything, but hey, you gotta go. I know you've been living here with your family. You've had this home for the last 300 years, but I don't care. We were here 2,000 years ago.
Well, it's not
We're
like we would have
taking this
gotten. I mean, there's a reason they created two states in the first place, right? You have to understand that we just weren't getting along.
What did he say? What was the last thing you said there?
We weren't getting along. That's the reason that there was two states instead of one. Otherwise, they would have created one secular Israel, Palestine, whatever they would have called.
Yeah, the local populations typically don't like foreigners moving in, telling them that they're gonna replace them and kill them if they don't like it. Right? It's really nothing strange that they didn't get along after that, right? If let's imagine you're back in Canada, right? You're back in Canada or you're in America, whatever. Let's say the people of Brazil come into your town in Canada and in droves, like millions and millions, to the point where in 10 years they now make up 30% of the population after making up maybe 3, right? Which was the population in 1880. And now they happily announce that, hey, we're going to move even more people here. We're going to reproduce, have a lot of kids, and we're going to become the majority. And once we're the majority, we are going to kick you out of your home, so we'll take everything over and we'll throw you out, right? Would you like that? Would you be like, okay, this is completely fair, let's just get along with it? Or would you do what these people
did
and reply?
Is there a reason
rebel?
for the Brazilians people being there?
But is there a reason for Europeans and Americans to come in there ethnically displaced Palestinians?
Well, at the time, yes, because there was a Holocaust going on, and we had to go somewhere.
And you just again,
it was the most convenient place to go to, because that's where we essentially we were promised a state for our own people, so that's where they went. That's like the only logical position to take at the moment.
Look, if you went to a land where there were barely any people, there weren't a lot of established settlements there wasn't any established civilization, then I'd be like, okay, cool, right? If you colonize a place where there's hardly anybody, I'd be like, okay, who cares? But in this case, there were people there. They had been very well established. They had lived there for centuries, and they had their own national identity. And there you just show up and say, by the way, because Hitler did the Holocaust, we're taking your land from you, right? Yes, the Holocaust was horrible. It never should have happened. And I totally get why they would...
Shit.
It's okay. And I totally get why they would want to have their own state after that. I get why. I'm not heartless in just seeing it from the only Islamic perspective here. If I put myself in the shoes of a Holocaust survivor, I completely get why you would want your own country. However, that desire doesn't... However, the Palestinians, they want their own country too. And they want to live in the place where they were born, where they have had their ancestry for centuries, right? If you ask any Palestinian there, most of them can trace back ancestry in that same plot of land for like 9-10 generations. They have an extremely strong claim to that land. And they want their state too. They want their state too. You want a state, but they want their state too. They were there first, right? It's their land. Now, if you went to them and were like, hey, this is our case. We want our land here. Have a vote on it here. Do you want to give some of this land to the Jews? Yes or no? If so, how much? What parts do they get? If they then say, vote yes, and say, okay, northern Palestine goes to the Jews, and that's what the Palestinians agree on, then that's fine. It's their land. They get to choose what to do with it. Cool. But you just came in and took it over and happily announced that you were going to commit ethnic cleansing on them. Right? That is unjustifiable. You having been oppressed in Germany doesn't justify you oppressing others.
The area in Tel Aviv, for example, I know I'm moving subjects a bit, but the area in Tel Aviv was just a giant malaria and mosquito infested shithole. It was just like how do you say, a swamp, essentially.
I've heard that story, yeah.
Right, so like that was that entire area.
You took a bit more than just Tel Aviv, though, didn't you?
No, we took more than Tel Aviv, but I'm saying that we took the kind of the butt end of the
might I say that Jaffa, which is today a part of Tel Aviv proper, is an ancient city. Right? It's been populated for millennia by Palestinians.
Yeah, I've been to the old city of Jaffa.
Well, I'm glad they didn't erase it like they did in hundreds of other Palestinian places, which is good, I guess. But yeah, the idea that Netanyahu said in his talk with Jordan Peterson that this was just a barren swampland that nobody used, or the saying that a land without a people for a people without a land, it's just not true. It's a complete fabrication to justify a ludicrous land claim, which never should have happened. So that's not true. It is true that parts of modern-day Tel Aviv were uninhabited and was swampland. That's true. But you took quite a bit more than just Tel Aviv. If you only said, okay, we want to make the city-state of half Tel Aviv because this is what we made and we don't get along with you, so we'll make a city-state here, then okay, I guess we can maybe agree on that. But like, you can't use Tel Aviv as an argument for the entire place in this case. Thank you for the follow, my brother. Thank you for the follow. Thank you for the support.
The thing is, we took two cities, we took 2 cities, and you guys got the rest. And Jerusalem was supposed to be an international city. I believe that was. I'm not sure how that would have worked, but
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Let me just reply to this guy. Yes, yes, I'm a Muslim. Yes, I'm a Muslim. Again, though, you got basically all, or not all, but you got most of the arable land, and which you got was, again, still majority populated by Arabs. So the idea that it was just 2 cities, Tel Aviv and then another, that's not true. Like the majority of people there were still Arabs, and if it was only Tel Aviv and another Jewish city, then the majority wouldn't have been Palestinian, right? That wouldn't have been the case. So something here isn't quite adding up. Right? Or what do you have to say?
I gotta say, you changed my perspective quite a bit.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that.
Not to say that I'm still not a Zionist, but
Yeah, you live in Israel. Like, it would be a major shift. But like, I hope you
Yeah.
at least don't believe like the last guy that I debated that Haifa, Jerusalem, everything was just desert in 1948, and that they just blessed it with population. Like, I have TikToks on if you want to check it out. You're a lot smarter than he was. You are a ton smarter than he was, and you can actually reason with me here, instead of just denying absolutely everything that I say and making the most ludicrous claims possible. So I appreciate that. We're having a logical discussion, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that. There are sane... Oh, that's my desk lamp. There are sane Zionists out there. Never could have imagined, but some exist. Seemingly, at least. Right. But
I'm sure there's people far more educated on this topic on my side of this than I am.
he wasn't one of them. He said that an ancient city was built in 1948.
Which
So,
one?
he said that Haifa was built in 1948 by the Israelis, despite it being created in the 13th century BC, like before the time of Moses. So, yeah, a few years off here and there, you know.
Just a few.
Just a couple, just a few tens of thousands, right? But yeah, I'm very glad that this wasn't the whole shouting match, and it was that we actually had a proper dialogue with each other, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Most of what I, in most of the content that I make, I am quite aggressive with my rhetoric, but I can reason, right? I can have a logical discussion, and we can have a adult conversation, right? And I'm glad that you could do the same.
I agree. No, it's a rare thing these days. Very rare thing.
It is absolutely a rare thing. In fact, one big measure of intelligence is being able to listen to completely opposing viewpoints without having a complete meltdown about it. That is a pretty good measure of intelligence. Like, if you can say something that completely goes against someone's worldview and they don't freak out about it, that person has a high likelihood of being somewhat intelligent, at least. Thank you for the follow, my dear brother. Thank you for the follow. Now at 80 followers, mashallah, we've gone up a lot today. From where we started, alhamdulillah. Introduce us up in the chat, bud. Introduce us up in the chat. But yeah, it was a great dialogue, much more civilized than the other one. In fact, I'll send you the TikTok that I made from this guy, and you can get an idea of what I'm saying. Socks, don't give me water poisoning with all of these channel points, please. Right? Just so you know, like in my Twitch is a action point that you can put in to make me drink water, and Socks has been spamming that all day long. So nice. he's gonna give me, and now we have another one who did it. Okay, and a second, a third. I'm just glad he isn't doing the 15 push-up one. He probably could have done that ages ago with all the points that he's been spending at this point. Right. What is your perspective on Hamas? Is that a question for me, or it doesn't show me your name because I'm in stream mode? All I see is S. All I see is that your name is S. So S.
Really?
Yeah,
S.
I'm in streamer mode, so it hides you completely.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so... oh no, you can't change anything, because I'm in streamer mode, it hides everything about your profile,
Yeah,
so nobody can find you.
if you stream it before.
Alright,
It's just Sir Ad Revenue. Ad Rev if you want to.
Sir Ad Revenue, okay. As of what's a question for me, okay. My perspective on Hamas is that... How should I need to step on eggshells because they're declared a terrorist group in my country. But what I say is that the mission for Palestinian independence and taking back the land is a very noble one. Stretch again. But yeah, it is a very noble ambition, and it's completely justified, and it's something that needs to happen in the near future to end the humanitarian disaster that is Palestine today. However, I do say that killing civilians is unacceptable. You should never do it. What happened in that kibbutz shouldn't have happened. What happened to the IDF soldiers, I could not care less about. But it's the civilians that matter. And that is why I also consider the IDF a terror group, because they are also very deliberately targeting civilians. So that is my... If you didn't do this, which I appreciate. But if you did the typical thing and asked me straight off the bat, do you condemn Hamas? Do you condemn Hamas? Do you condemn Hamas? I would ask you to condemn the IDF before I say anything.
I figured I figured you're kind of on that position.
Yeah, of course. I think that I think fighting for Palestinian independence is a great thing. I think it's something that more people should fight for globally. But killing civilians goes entirely against Sharia. It is immoral. You should never do that, and it's injustifiable no matter what the situation is. Right?
Probably my hottest take on this is that if they only attack the military bases, and properly declared war against Israel, then it would have been. I mean, I have friends in the military. I have friends that died inside those bases, but one of which was a Muslim Arab. But
why would a Muslim fight for that country? That's my question.
He likes it enough, I guess. I mean, he was trying to go for the special forces, believe it or not.
Astaghfirullah.
But yeah, here's the thing: it would have been fair game. Not to say that Israel wouldn't have retaliated, but it would have been more or less fair game, at least across international law and across moral law when it comes to war. Israel obviously would have fought back as it usually does, and it would have been like on the news for basically the entire year. But ultimately, it would have been a lot more justifiable on the Palestinian side than it is now.
Well, I do think that they should have stuck to taking off the military targets, of course. They shouldn't have done what they did in the kibbutzes. Again, them killing IDF, I have absolutely no problem with. No problem whatsoever. They are military targets, they are oppressors. To me, they are more or less equal as it stands right now based on what they're doing. I see them no differently than I would see an SS soldier, right? Even though SS is a voluntary group, they volunteered for that, and they are conscripts of the IDF. They are still contributing to a state of apartheid. They are actively doing so, and they are actively committing acts of war crimes, apartheid, and genocide. And if you are a perpetrator of that, then the people you are oppressing are more than justified to take you out. The civilians, however, again, unjustifiable, according to Sharia and, of course, any basic morals.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the IDF, as long as if you take captives with them, follow Sharia with them, but like if you target them, go for it. Thank you so much for the follow. I need to change this. I can't. Maria, thank you for the follow. Hey, my name is Maria. I'm a Russian girl from Moscow. How's Moscow over there? Is it colder here than here?
That's likely a bot.
Yeah, likely. I've had a few of those. Like last stream, there was this one person, Chloe Scott, or person, it was a bot. She's been in my stream 3 times by now. Always follows and unfollows. Asks the same thing. Basically said, "Hey, how are you doing? Do you stream daily?" And I was like, "Okay, you've asked this the last 3 times. I've answered you." And then I said, "Okay." What happened before is that she's gonna say, "I followed you on Twitter. Come follow me and like my tweet." And I was like, and right as I said that, that's exactly what she posted. I was like, okay, bot, mods, please better, So Maria from Moscow, don't ask me to. Please don't ask me to like any of your tweets or pitch me something. If you have good intentions, though, mashallah, you're more than welcome to stay. What country am I from? I live in Sweden. Let's see. But you are against the Israeli war strategy, though, of deliberately targeting civilians, right?
I wouldn't say they are deliberately targeting civilians because, I mean, ultimately we have our own intelligence system. Like, if there was, at this point, if this was our strategy, there would have been some kind of incriminating of evidence based off of it.
There's a ton of it, by the way.
No, I mean, like, us deliberately striking civilian targets just for the sake of killing those civilians.
Well, you have precision striked ambulances. Like, you have some of the most accurate missile systems in the world. You can literally shoot missiles that are
Oh yeah, I'm
actively
not saying
flying through the
it's
air.
not deliberate. I'm just saying that we're not striking to kill civilians.
But they're ambulances, though, right? They're schools, they're hospitals, right? You know there will be civilians there.
The hospitals we haven't struck yet. We haven't struck at all.
You did strike. You did strike hospital. I'm not referring to that specific one. There's far more, and there's sources for that too, such as the Turkish friendship hospitals that you have there. Almost all of the hospitals right now in Gaza are either out of function or they are, they have been completely sieged by the IDF. Right, there was a strike, I believe, either today or yesterday, where over 200 people that were killed, many of them children. Again, precision strikes on ambulances, schools, residential buildings. Like when you have a civilian death toll this high, which is higher than that of World War II. Not if you look at it totally, because this has been happening for a month, but if you look at the speed of how many civilians were being killed in World War II by the Nazis, and you compare it to this is happening much faster, and that definitely indicates, it's very telling, and the UN agrees, that there is something, in the UN's own words, something terribly wrong with Israel's war strategy for this to have been able to happen. And that wrong thing might be bombing aid trucks, ambulances, hospitals, schools, residential buildings, businesses.
I mean, there's been evidence of the schools having weapons and artillery rounds inside of them.
Again, that doesn't.
I'll have to pull up the video.
That wouldn't, even if that would be the case, right? Even if there's absolute proof that the IDF didn't just put them there for the smiles and the shoot and the camera, even if there's evidence
Doesn't
of that,
look like Israeli munitions or.
we did see a video on my last stream where I believe it was Jonathan Cornicus, one of your media stars,
Jonathan
Cornicus.
Yeah, Conricus.
Conicus, okay. But yeah, he went into I think it was a hospital or a school in Gaza, and said that he found a bunch of weapons behind an MRI machine. Right, and then he pulled it out. But the issue is that MRI machines are magnetic, and there's no proof of them not having put that there just 5 minutes prior. It's very weak evidence at best. But it's not weaker than the supposed phone calls which the Israeli Twitter account keeps pulling up, right? You have two Arabic speakers who are apparently Hamas. We don't know who they are. There's two Arabic voices talking with each other, speaking all Israeli propaganda. Basically saying, oh yeah, we're hiding under a hospital right now. I'm in an ambulance. I could go in any ambulance I want. We're underneath the school today. I just hid my stash of 200 weapons right behind the school. Like, there's no proof of that. And when Arabic speakers actually reacted to these phone calls, they said, that's not an Arab, that's a Hebrew accent on that speaker, right? I don't think Hamas would have Hebrew accent unless you have some Jewish defectors there, which I don't think you do. So it's common knowledge at this point that if something comes out from the IDF, the first thing you should do is doubt it. Let's see. There was one person here in the chat who said something interesting that I want to know how you think about. This is what he said. I personally consider the settlers in the West Bank as combatants just as much as the IDF. If Palestinians violently retaliate against settlers in the West Bank, they should be justified as well. Internationally, they would be. Under international law, they are combatants and they are occupiers and war criminals as well, because settlements are war crimes. So he is right. But what do you think about that ad revenue?
Except for the fact that most of those sorry, most of those settlements are family settlements. Like those are just families settling. Kids, women, children.
Of
Those
course,
are
I'm
the
not saying
people
go and
that they
kill
target.
children, but I'm saying that legally they're combatants and war criminals just by being there.
Right, but it's not like they're aware of that. Not the children, at least.
Oh no, the children aren't aware, but I'm guessing that the adults are. I would guess
They
that they
don't
are
see it that
more
way.
than aware of what they're doing.
No, they don't see it that way. I
Well,
mean,
it doesn't matter
again,
how they
I
see
lived
it.
in one of those settlements for a month. I know what I'm talking about. I've been there. I've straight up talked to the people about that subject, and they see their being there as like they're just being in Israel, but or surrounded by Arabs essentially.
Well, of course they do. Like, it's not like you're gonna say here, and yeah, we live here. We know it's their land, but like, we know it's their land, but like, we don't care. We're here, right? Well, even though some of them do say that, actually. I've seen plenty of documentaries interviewing them, and I'm more and more disgusted every time I do because they're the most radical people. They have no regard for any of the people living there, and they're complete psychopaths. And they are war criminals, all of them who live there. Now, granted, I don't think you should be killing children. It doesn't matter if it's a war criminal child or not. Such a weird thing to say. But children, you shouldn't kill them. The adults, however, they are more than aware of what they're doing, no matter what they might be telling others. And it doesn't really matter what their perspective is, because from the people who own that land, the Palestinians, and from the people, and from the international perspective as well, these are war criminals. This is not their land, right? I'm sure if you ask, like, in Sweden, oftentimes you will have gypsies who set up big camps in IKEA parking lots. Right? I'm sure if you ask them, they think there's nothing wrong with what they're doing and that they have a perfect right to be there, but they don't. And them thinking that way does not matter. They're still not allowed to be there, and they need to be removed, right? So
No, I think that they should be removed, but I just not violently. The
I
Israeli
think
government should go in and take the people, take their shit, set up something in the Israeli state, and then make them fuck off essentially.
I think we should aim to do it peacefully. However, if they retaliate because they are very well armed, you can thank
They're
the
not.
Christian
They're,
evangelicals for that. Then
they are not
violence
going
would
to
be
be
justified.
retaliating against the Israeli military.
Well, they have been shooting. I mean, if they can shoot random Palestinian olive farmers for, if they can shoot random Palestinian olive farmers for just doing their jobs, then if, I think they're quite unpredictable when they use violence and when they don't. This is something that happened recently, by the way. There was an olive farmer just minding his business. He forgot his phone in the olive field, and when he went back to get it, there was somebody from far away who shot him. Thank you, Mishka, for making me stretch and looking after my joints. Thank you so much for that. But yeah, that is something that happened very recently. It was an off-duty IDF soldier who did that. Are you also aware of the wolf systems that are in place within the West Bank?
The wolf systems.
Systems, yeah. The wolf, they're surveillance systems that would put the Chinese government to shame. Have you heard of them?
I think I have.
Essentially, to put it mildly, they have white wolf, blue wolf, and then I think red wolf as well. One of the big parts of that is that they have surveillance cameras in every single area that they can of Palestinian cities. A big one being Hebron. This tracks everything they do, all the movements they make. They spy on them with bugged mics, so to say. They have IDF soldiers who raid them randomly, take their selfies, and adopt them to the systems. They do this randomly, by the way. They don't need any justification to do this. That is part of it. Just a storage facility for every Palestinian who lives in that area and all their movement, all their habits, their views, and everything. Then there's White Wolves, which is for the settlers, where they can directly access this and see everything, every little detail about the Palestinians who live next to them. By the way, settlers also have the power to basically tell the IDF what to do. So if they say, a Palestinian over there is a bit fishy, they will raid that house just because the settler said so. Then there's also all manner of other things for the government, contractors, and everything. But it puts the Chinese surveillance systems to complete shame. Like, have you seen what a typical Palestinian neighborhood looks like in Hebron? Like, it looks like a concentration camp. It's some of these checkpoints. They wouldn't look out of place in a prison.
I know there's checkpoints all there's checkpoints all over the place, but it's really just to protect the Jewish neighborhoods in Hebron.
But they're not supposed to be there in the first place.
Right, but I mean, again, Jews are very stubborn, so.
No, that doesn't matter. They're still not supposed to be there.
No, well, there's a reason they're there, and that's the fact that they have their own. How do you say it? The Cave of the Patriarchs. That's what it is.
Say that again, please.
They have the Cave of the Patriarchs there. That's the only reason we stayed there.
Well, them being stubborn or not, I'm sure the gypsies are very stubborn when the police shove them away from the IKEA parking lots, but that doesn't really matter. They have to go, and they should receive zero protections from any legal body to be there. Like, there's no justification for them being there. You can't just go into somebody else's city and say, hey, I'm taking half of it now, and I'm putting the rest of you in essentially a prison-like system, because I'm a bit stubborn today, right? This is not how you do things.
We offered them that area in the first place, so.
This was their area to begin with. Like it's not like you can it's not like you can claim generosity for letting them live in what is essentially a big prison.
If they would have had it by now.
No, the Israeli government has made that basically impossible, very intentionally. In fact, the entire reason why Hamas exists was to prevent this from happening. In case you didn't know, Netanyahu was a big part of this. In fact, to sum it up, the Fatah movement in the this was a few decades ago. They were getting extreme prevalence within Palestine. They were rallying people up, and a Palestinian national movement was extremely strong at that time. And in order to prevent this, because this was the last thing the Israelis wanted, they needed to divide and conquer. It's the oldest strategy. So, and just conveniently, an Egyptian sheikh from the Muslim Brotherhood had just moved there from Egypt into Gaza, and he wanted to set up his own little Islamic organization, which would later become Hamas, which was something the Israeli government at the time really, really liked. So they gave them all the permits they needed, they gave them funding, room to do what they wanted, they turned a blind eye to everything they did, let them rally people, and it worked, because they completely split the Palestinian line, and they divided the people between the national Fatah governance and Islamist Hamas. So they admitted this themselves. This was to prevent a Palestinian state from occurring. So the idea that if they laid down their arms tomorrow there wouldn't be a state is not true. Israel has been trying terribly hard to ensure that they never get a state, and that this is impossible. Right? That's the reason we have the settlements here. A lot of them were removed by the previous government, but when this wannabe fascist government came in, well, they are fascist to the Palestinians, but they want to be more, of course. But when this new government came in, they put those settlements right back on the map, let them move in, gave them military protection, everything. So why do you think these settlements exist? Why do you think all of these militaries in the West Bank? It isn't to keep people there safe, right? It isn't. The only reason is to separate.
It is, and they succeed.
The only reason is to divide the Palestinians. They did this very clearly with Gaza and the West Bank too. They made it extremely difficult intentionally to travel between Gaza and the West Bank. This was to create different cultures between them. Today, Gaza is more similar to Egypt, meanwhile the West Bank is more similar to Jordan. They've almost lost a cultural identity together. Almost, not entirely, but almost. And they're now doing this in the West Bank as well, because it's worked very well. So now they want Ramallah to have one set of cultural practices, another one in Jenin, another one in Hebron, another one in East Jerusalem. They want to make it as difficult as possible to travel between these places, to lock them in, so to say. What is normally like a 40-minute drive between Hebron and East Jerusalem now would take 3 hours because of all the packed checkpoints they have to travel through. So travel there happens far less, because why would you want to take such a long drive to travel such a short distance, right? So it's all to divide and conquer. So the idea that if they put down their arms, they would have a state tomorrow, it's false, because Israel has done everything they can to make that an impossibility. So that Ben Shapiro take, it's propaganda.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's the oldest strategy in the book. It's divide and conquer. if the Palestinian people were all together and they had their own national movement and the IDF weren't there, the national movement would be much more powerful than it is, and you would probably have seen a Palestinian state by now, but they've done. But of course, you can't have that happen. I think it was your old Prime Minister, Bennett. Complete psychopath, Naftali Bennett, complete psychopath, piece of work, that one. I watched a video of him saying what he wanted to do with the Palestinians, and he said that we can give them 30% of the West Bank. Like, we want to be generous. We'll give them 30% of the West Bank. Okay. Will they get their own self-governance there? Can they have their own military? Can they actually have their own state? No, we'll still have our military there, and we'll do everything there. Well, like, they can set their own tax rates and stuff. Like, bro... What is this garbage? What is this garbage? So, no, the Israeli government has absolutely no intention whatsoever on giving the Palestinians a state. That's not true. I'm going to try not to drink as much water in case Soxt here decides to spam the hydrate button again. I've gone through 3 bottled waters at this point, and an energy drink, but... yeah, I know it's like almost midnight. I don't want to be drinking that anymore. Oh, come on. I'm going to stop saying that. Now 3 people just redeemed it.
Amongst them, me.
Oh, of course.
This is your fault.
It is my fault. I reminded the people of it.
Exactly.
Anyway, it's all fun. It's all fun and games. I'm happy to not be the only one trying to give the streamer water. You're not the only one. Not one bit. Well, yeah. When I found you in the conservative server, the person who tagged you and let you know that I was looking for the baiters, I remember he's too good sometimes, but I remember he said something along the lines of, this person wants to annihilate your Jewish brothers, wants to commit a genocide on you. Like, is that the impression you've gotten from speaking to me for the past hour or so?
No, not really, no.
Alright, mashallah, so you're a propaganda-free person. I swear it's because you just arrived. You arrived in Israel, you arrived 1.5 years ago. You haven't been through the propaganda system, so you still have something rational within you. Right.
No, it's not just that. It's just I try to keep that kind of outlook on the world whenever I interact with it. It's really.
I don't think it would have been the same if you had gone through the Israeli education system like a lot of other people that I've talked to.
I think it would have. I'm generally. I mean, nobody's really immune to propaganda, but
nobody is. Yeah. Well, like if that's something you're shoved down your throat from kindergarten, right?
Yeah, I mean, from kindergarten, then I probably would have been on their side, but
along with your parents shoving down the same thing because they were also brainwashed, and their parents were the ones who carried this entire thing out. They were very ideologically motivated. Like
my parents and my grandparents are both from the USSR.
Oh, from the USSR. Okay, yeah. So. Okay, so this is why you're so reasonable. Like you don't, your parents aren't from Israel. You weren't educated there.
I mean, they both lived there both of them lived there for a decade. My mother served during the First Lebanon War, so.
Okay. I gotcha. But you didn't grow up. You didn't grow up there yourself. You skipped the Israeli brainwashing because many Israelis have no problem with others referring to the Palestinians as human animals. In fact, there's literal rallies where you have children shouting death to Arabs. Like a random kid who's been living.
Well, you show me that on their side. I can show you the exact same thing on
I'm not saying the Palestinians don't do that either, but I would say that
every country has some kind of propaganda system in education.
Yeah, but not every country has children rallying in the hundreds shouting death to X ethnic group. I haven't seen that personally. Right. But I know that it happens with Palestinians.
I don't think that's a result of the education system, though.
I believe in a large part that it is.
It's because of the parents. It's certainly because of the parents.
Definitely,
I have some experience with the Israeli. I have some experience with the Israeli education system, and I have to say, like, it's just some of the parents are extremists. Some of them are idiots. Both of them suck, but they're the reason for this in the first place.
Of course, but yeah, you're right. The parents are definitely a big part of it. However, I am 100% certain that the education system is pushing this, because at the end of the day, you cannot have this sort of state where you cannot have a state where you push apartheid, where you push this level of discrimination, where you treat people this badly, systematically and very intentionally, without the people believing inherently that these people are not people, right? Because when you have hundreds of children shouting death to Arabs, this isn't them having sat down one day and contemplated life and come to the conclusion that Arabs are subhuman and need to die, right? That's not something a child will think about. That is the result of extreme brainwashing, because hate is something you're born with. You're taught to hate. So it's very clear when you see those scenes that this is something that goes far, far deeper. And that is something that Israel needs, because if its children don't hate the other side, then the next generation will end up probably giving the Palestinians a state, which of course the current government, it's their worst nightmare. So there definitely is a lot of brainwashing going on in the schools, because there needs to be, to preserve this state. Hitler didn't start with the youth for no reason. There's a reason almost every single dictatorship which relied on oppression had a major youth program. It's because if you control the youth, you control the future. That is said by them themselves. And it's true, because it works. They have shown that it works. And that is why I can say for a certainty that this is something that Israeli children go through. So you are a one or two state solution guy. Personally, I'm going to say this now. Mr. Adrevenue, do not take offense to this, but I've been saying this my whole life, and I don't want to be inconsistent here. But I am in favor of a one-state solution, simply because I don't believe a two-state solution can work. We are seeing the result of a two-state solution here. Now, we also have the argument that I don't believe Israel has any actual right to be there, but going into it from a more, going at it from a different angle, a diplomatic angle, Jazakallah khair, this is what it is. Jazakallah khair. Mashallah. But going at it from a more internationally agreeable angle, we can see that what we see today is a result of a two-state solution. Right? This is the best the two-state solution has brought us, which is that the Israelis have done everything they can to prevent it. They have done absolutely everything they can to prevent a two-state solution from happening, and we are seeing the result of that. So for as long as the state of Israel exists, this will continue to happen. History has shown this to be true. So in order for there to actually be peace, there needs to be drastic measures, because this is a very drastic situation. Right? That is the argument that I would present to the United Nations. Now, if I'm making a speech at the mosque, which I did yesterday, it's a different story. I will bring different arguments. But if I was presenting it for the UN, that is what I would say. Your mic cut out there for a second, my brother.
No, I'm good. Hold on. Here's better?
Yeah, of course. Let me know if my mic cuts out as well.
No, you're good.
I'm seeing on my Discord that sometimes when I'm talking, the green circle isn't showing up. So just let me know.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it cuts out, but like I kind of connect the dots with what you're saying, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm watching through my OBS and I see that it's picking up my audio, but then I see that Discord isn't, and I'm like, what's happening here?
It's weird.
Yeah. For sure. But do you have any thoughts or so on what I said, considering that I basically just said that your country shouldn't exist?
Get in line.
Alright, fair enough. Not responding to the situation, just get in the line with the billions of people who agree with me. Right.
Ultimately, it's just a matter of. I mean, I'm not a very. I'm sure you'll understand that you've gotten that kind of impression of me, but I'm not a very emotional person. So like, I mean, I don't have much of a reaction to your thoughts. Like, oh, okay, those are your thoughts. Move on. I'm gonna go drink my water and make myself some salmon.
That forced me to drink water like you just did. Oh no! I said it again. Come on. Okay.
For the love of justice, I'm going to drink this 2-liter bottle right now.
All right, fair enough.
God help me.
Let's see. You were 1 point up. Socks save that for something funny. Like, save it for me to do a British. Save it for me to do a British accent. Could you save it for this so I can speak a bit like I come from the good old UK for like 15 minutes? That works pretty well. You don't have a VIP redeem? Is that something that I should add? Good shot. Yeah.
I could just drink 500 milliliters in one go. What the fuck?
Bro, be careful. When I was 6 years old, my grandma told me a horror story that I still remember. There was a 8-year-old girl and a 6-year-old boy who made a deal with each other who can drink the most water wins, and she ended up downing 6 liters in one go, and she died of water poisoning. So,
Jesus Christ.
yeah, it was a brutal story. I don't know why she told that to a 6-year-old, but like I still remember it to this day. So,
And the body can only, I think it can only process 1 liter per hour.
tell that to the people who take creatine. My brother is a mega fitness enthusiast, and he takes a ton of it. Like when you go into the kitchen, it looks like a coke addict that just bent their butt. It's creatine. And he
like
drinks
a
way too
heroin
much
addict,
water.
put on the spoon and then boil.
Yeah, precisely. I take creatine and protein. There's nothing wrong with taking it, of course, but if you do take creatine, like, it shows that you're very serious about what you do. As for me, I've tried to take it, but I just forget about it. I buy creatine, I buy protein powder, then I just forget to take it. Right? That's because I work out. 2 reasons. I want to keep my body and mind healthy, and I want to look decently good.
Yeah.
My brother wants to be a competitive bodybuilder, so there's different priorities there, so to say.
Does he also follow Islam?
No, he isn't. We have
Gotcha.
very different political beliefs, so to say. Extremely different.
Yeah, I can imagine. So when did you convert again? You're what, in your early 20s, yeah? So you converted.
I converted this in April here. April.
Hmm.
So for almost 7 months at this point. So a little more than half a year.
Interesting.
So my brother is a full-on nationalist, and I'm a Muslim. So we have or an Islamist, I guess, depending on how I want to define that. So we have some interesting discussions, so to say. And with interesting, I mean, it gets heated sometimes.
I don't know. I mean, it's family matters. Family discussing politics has never gone well.
Oh no, never, never. I have to keep an extremely low profile when I'm with my extended family. One of them is a politician in
Oh,
an Islamophobic party, so very Islamophobic. So it's safe to say,
how much of your family knows that you're Muslim?
they don't. They don't. My dad has done everything he can to keep that away from them. So I've simply said to him, okay, I'm looking to get married within the next year or so. Muslim women are very easy to identify, so how are you going to explain that to them? And, well, it's safe to say he didn't really have a strategy for that. So I guess it's only a matter of time.
You'll have to come out of the closet at some point.
Is that how you want to call it?
That's what I'm gonna call it from now.
I think
Sorry.
coming out of the Kaaba might be a better way. I don't know if that's allowed to say, but I guess
Coming out of Mecca.
Coming out of the Kaaba, you know, the first temple built by Prophet Ibrahim has a black cover over it. The square building, the one that we
Masjid al-Haram.
In Masjid al-Haram, yes, precisely.
Yeah.
It's the one that we pray towards, and when you do Umrah or Hajj.
Oh yeah.
Then
the big black box.
Yeah, I don't want to call it a box because it isn't a box. Like even Jews should hold some sort of sanctity to it because it was built by the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I'm not really religious. I would consider myself an agnostic theist.
An agnostic theist. How does that work?
I believe in God, but I don't abide by any religion.
So the lazy religious kind, or what?
Well, I'm not religious. It's just a belief. That's basically it.
So you're not one of those crystal people, like the ones that talk about karma, the ones that wave with crystals and cards and whatever, and think they're connecting with the universe, like.
Your birth date says everything about your personality.
Oh yeah, of course. I know a lot of those people. They get very angry when I question their beliefs. I wonder why. But
yeah, it's those communities. They have this kind of sense of toxic positivity in a way.
Toxic positivity.
Exactly. Yeah. toxic positivity.
Zox, that's not good, my brother. You have very good intentions. You've been very respectful. You've been very curious, and I'm more than happy to have you here, my brother. Again, you don't have to be a Muslim to be a part of this community. As long as you have good intentions and you're here for a good purpose, you're more than welcome, my brother. You're more than welcome. But yeah, toxic positivity is a great way to describe it. Like, we're super positive about each other, but if you slightly question their stupid beliefs, they will have a temper tantrum. Welcome to the stream, my dear brother. Welcome to the stream, my dear brother. Unknown don't task. That was a mouthful to pronounce. Yeah, we're hating on astrology here. I'm back 1 hour later, and we circled back to hating astrology. Of course. That is something that I think that most rational people, even though you're a Zionist and I'm an Islamist, we can agree that astrology is stupid, right?
Anyone that believes in astrology is a moron.
Of course.
I'm being soft on my words here.
Like, it's so funny when I just very simply question their beliefs. The biggest one being there are multiple realities. Reality is subjective. Truth is whatever you want it to be. And then I simply ask, okay, is there a truth to say that the sun is cold and that we don't exist? Is there any way that that's true? And I'm like, you know what? We'll talk about something else. Like,
I mean, I have to say, like, if this is, you can say that the sun is cold with some level of confidence. It's just like the concept behind cold never changes. The word can change, the concept doesn't.
Okay, so, like, if we want to take it to a hyper intellectual, like Jordan Peterson level, then yeah, sure, we can have a different type of discussion there.
I can. I've had this is like one of my best subjects of all of them.
What, cold?
No, concept.
No, concepts, okay.
Language.
Right, I got you. But yeah, my point is basically, if you question their extremely questionable beliefs, as you might have experienced, they are not too happy about that. They would never have a discussion like we two have right now. The discussion would have ended in a yelling match within 30 seconds.
Okay, well, okay, let's see this. Let's look up my traits according to my my personality according to the what's it called, the astrology personality
test.
Traits of a Sagittarius. Sagittarians are outgoing, cheerful, outgoing, who draw admiration and what the fuck, who wrote this? I'm quoting this directly. Sagittarians are outgoing, cheerful, outgoing, who draw admiration from everyone who comes in touch with them. Sagittarius are faithful, intelligent, forceful, and sympathetic. They're one of a kind, gifted, and wise beyond their years. I can't say that any of this is accurate.
Yeah, I'm apparently a Pisces, or whatever you want to call it. I was born in February, but and I read that description. It was like soft, sensitive, emotional, something like that. And no, I am quite the opposite, to be honest with you. I can be what I need to be when the time calls for it, but like it doesn't match, so to say. It doesn't match at all. I don't think you've gotten the impression that I'm a hyper emotional person or whatever. I think I've been fairly rational.
You haven't yelled at me once, so.
No. If you would raise your voice at me, or I would think there's a reason for yelling at you, I probably would. Or if you rile me up to the point where you start saying that we should murder all the babies and we should kill the breastfeeding ones. We actually, prior to debating with you, I reacted to a Zionist preacher who said precisely that. We need to kill everybody, the donkeys, the babies, the breastfeeding ones, because in 10 years they will be Hamas too. I get a bit emotional with those people. But you're being... Thank you for the follow, Dan90. Thank you so much for the follow. Thank you for the support. If you said something like that, I might get a bit emotional, because what you're saying is... What you would be saying is straight up genocidal. But you've been very rational with me. I wouldn't say that I would describe you as somebody who is straight up out of his mind. But... so yeah, you're not giving me much of a reason to... who are you debating? I'm debating Mr. Sir Ad Revenue right here. That is who I am debating. Well, it's kind of turned into a discussion. Now, it started out as a debate, but I guess we've become friends now all of a sudden.
Turns out the Jew and the Muslim can get along.
Well, of course we can. You got along perfectly well in Palestine with the Mizrahi and the Palestinians there. There was no issue before the Ashkenazi showed up.
Yeah.
It's not a Jew-Muslim matter. In my opinion, you have a genocidal oppressor and you have oppressor and you have an oppressed people. That's how I see. I don't see this as even though definitely. Even though it's Ashkenazi, I'm specifically when I'm saying Ashkenazi, I'm specifically referring to the Jews who aren't native to that land. The Mizrahi, they are native to that land. They've lived there as long as the Muslim Palestinians have. But the people who moved there from Brooklyn, whose names are Kaczynski, like they're not native to that land, right? So they are the ones.
Let's hope they don't send any mail bombs, huh?
What?
Let's hope they don't send any mail bombs.
Mail bombs. I mean, I would hope not. Oh, Sykes just told me who that was. I was just thinking, Polish name that sounds kind of Jewish. Then Kaczynski popped into
You
my
set
mind.
yourself up, bro. You set yourself up.
Yeah, I just remembered who that was when he said that, bro. But then again, I'm not affiliated with the U.S. government and live a bit far away from Montana.
Yeah, I would hope not.
No. I'm not affiliated with any government, really. at least for the moment, I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I was thinking this was going to be like a 1 hour or something debate, but when did we start?
2 hours ago, I think.
Yeah, we are coming up on. We are coming up on over. No, it's over 2 hours at this point. Mashallah. But yeah, I'm glad that we were able to have a great discussion with each other. I must say, you seem like you are much more rational than the other guys debated. Right? I low-key expected it to be something like that. I was getting my, I was preparing for a shouting match like the last time, but I was very positively surprised, I must say.
Well, you're not getting a shouting match.
No. You seem very calm and collected, right? And you were willing to listen, something the other guy definitely wasn't.
In fact, this is what you're getting.
May Allah promote you to an air conditioner. Yes,
Bro, you did not have to do that. You did not have to do that, bro. You didn't.
I did.
You did not have to do that, brother.
Hopefully, this grows the stream and to some extent. Subs are like the best way to grow a stream, and
yeah, of course. I've noticed that those who are subbed have a bigger tendency to be active. Like, mashallah, bro. Mashallah, brother. Mashallah. Thank you. Genuinely. We're ending this off on a. Just thank you, bro. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Seriously, there's not much I can say. Actions speak louder than words.
You're very right about that, my dear brother. You're very right about that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide you, and may He bless you as well.
Cheers, man.
Cheers, my brother. Cheers. Have a good one.
You too.